So I'm with Dace Potus today. He's one of our great student reporters. He goes to DePaul. He's written a handful of articles just alone on what's going on his campus, in addition to other work. And I'll link those below on Rumble and YouTube. But I wanted to talk to him about what it's like to be a college student during COVID, how his classmates are reacting, how his professors are reacting, if there's been any decrease in the worry now that it's been almost 2 years. There's vaccines. We know more about how COVID is spread. So yeah, Dace, do you want to just start by introducing yourself? What year are you? What are you studying?
Yeah, so I'm Dace. I'm a junior at DePaul, and I'm studying political science. I've been living in Chicago for the majority of the pandemic so far, only taking one semester to move back home, and it's definitely been an interesting experience, to say the least.
Great. So at your university, you just had what, 2 weeks of online classes to start the semester?
Yeah, that's what we've had so far, and we just got to our first week of in-person class this past week.
And pretty much everyone on campus is vaccinated, right? Like there's a vaccine
Yeah,
mandate.
there is a vaccine mandate, and exemptions seem to be very strict and rarely given out.
Okay. And so what do you're in your class, you're in your English writing seminar class or your economics class. What is it like? I mean, are students telling you, yeah, this is dumb, like I've gotten triple vaccinated, I still have to wear three masks. I still have to wear masks. I can't, I mean, can you eat in the dining halls? Can you go to, the basketball game or the volleyball game? What is it like, and what are you allowed to do and what aren't you allowed to do?
Yeah, so the general consensus of people I've talked to, at least, has been that mostly this is dumb. People are very sick of being forced to go online and have a worse educational experience than they signed up for. Um, Most students here live off campus, so they don't really have the flexibility of being having a reduced fee for their dorms or something like that. So there's a lot of additional costs that aren't necessarily worth it for students when they're forced online. As far as all the on-campus stuff, everything's open pretty much. You have to wear a mask. They updated their guidelines this past week to say you have to double mask now or wear an N95. So that's just another wrinkle. You can go to the basketball games, you can go to the library, you can go eat in the dining halls. Now, I believe I don't have a dining plan, but I believe students can go back to there now. Yeah.
Okay, and who do you think is driving these restrictions? I mean, you did an article a few weeks ago that, DePaul said, well, we're relying on the Chicago Department of Public Health guidance. We looked into it. We made some calls and emails. The city never told DePaul to, I guess to be fair to the university, they kind of just vaguely said, oh, we're relying on guidance. The DePaul, excuse me. The city never told DePaul you need to go online for a few weeks. The city spokesperson for public health said they're probably just talking about generally, getting vaccinated, socially distancing. But do you think it's professors driving it? Is it just a small group of students that are just really vocal? Like who's driving these different? You got a double mask, you have to get boosted, all of this kind of restrictions.
Yeah. So last week, DePaul seemed a bit on the fence in their communications about booster shots. They were recommending them, obviously, but it didn't sound like they were going to mandate them. Just after that, though, our faculty council and our student government both put out statements saying that they support a booster mandate. And within 2 days after that, we got an email saying they were mandated. And that's when they shared the new guidance about double masking or N95s as well. Um, and it's definitely not the city that's pushing this because, at least with mask mandates and vaccine mandates, they've done they've taken that step way before the city ever mandated masks over the summer, and the vaccine mandates took place way before there was a vaccine passport in Chicago.
And I'm curious, like, if I think there's a lot of like misinformation out there about COVID. You know, you read a lot of stories where people are still acting like COVID can be transmitted through physical surfaces, but really we've known for over a year now, I think, that you can't get it. Like if someone sits in a desk and coughs on it and you sit there 2 hours later, you're not going to get COVID from that desk, you know? I think, you know, with HEPA filters and HVAC systems and all this, you know, the air is cleaned a lot, but do you still, you know, do you have any sense of people's knowledge of like actually how you get COVID? Like that we've learned a lot, I think, in 2 years, but it seems like a lot of policies are still based off of like, oh, you can get it from like touching a doorknob, or, you know, you can get it if someone passes you in the hallway and has COVID. Like, do you have a sense of the professors or the students like understanding actually of how COVID is transmitted?
Yeah, I feel like DePaul's policies are mostly they're not overbearing in the sense that they are looking to minimize transfer of the virus that is impossible. So they're not mandating masks outside. They're not um, excessively like making you wipe down surfaces after you leave or touch something. The majority of their guidance is just about masking and vaccinations.
Yeah, I mean, and so what is, you know, this is something we've seen with states, cities, universities. What is your understanding of what is DePaul's goal? So there's people on campus that probably have, you know, diabetes, you know, maybe they have a history of cancer or something. And so, you know, we want to protect those people, but there's been a vaccine, right? We know all these things. Like, do you get the sense the goal is no one at DePaul gets COVID, which for almost everyone is like basically going to be like having the flu for a week? Is that's I think what, you know, you watch these different people make, you know, mayors and things, and it's like, okay, but what is the end game, right? It's no longer flatten the curve, like that's no longer slow the spread. Do you think their idea is like we have 0 cases of COVID for a year? I mean, I guess I'm kind of like projecting, but
Yeah, that's the question that I've had for a while now is what's the metric for all of this to stop? And I don't really think they have one in mind. I think that they are just continuing to impose these restrictions in the hope of bringing cases lower, bringing deaths lower, bringing hospitalizations lower, with no metric for when there's an acceptable level of risk to society that we can mostly return to normal. Um, the city hasn't really put in place any timeline for vaccine mandates to end. It sounds like they're intended to be somewhat permanent. Mask mandates have had no deadline for them to end. So it's, yeah, it's definitely frustrating to not have any sort of guidelines for when we can at least ease up with restrictions.
and you had asked actually in your article, there's I don't know if he was a doctor, but he was like an epidemiologist or a biostatistician, right? That was on the university's committee determining COVID policies. And he said, I wasn't in the room when they decided to go remote, right? But the school had said something about, oh, we, you know, consulted with our experts. But you actually asked the person on the team that actually has a degree in, you know, studying the spread of virus. I forget what his exact degree is in, but it's something along those lines, biostatistician. And he said, oh, I wasn't even in the room when they decided. There was one university, I forget which one it was, where the person who's the head of the COVID response team was also like a professor of women and gender studies. You know, so it's just like, is it being based off of how do you minimize the risk to, you know, people with 4 comorbidities, or is it just And I wonder how much too, like the local media, if the Chicago Tribune runs a story saying DePaul has 500 new cases of COVID, there's still people who think, wow, that's the end of the world. Not, okay, 498 of those are 21-year-olds like you or 22 however old you are, and they're probably just going to sit in their apartment for a week and not go to class, and like they're not really they're responsible, respectful human beings. They're not going to go to a million places knowing they have COVID, but at the end of the day they're really not going to harm anyone. So I sometimes wonder how much the media and the constant reporting on it, about cases, is driving that. But yeah, do you have anything else you want to share? I mean, anything that you think would be helpful for people to understand about, like, because we write articles about this, of course, but what does that practically mean for you day to day, or anything else you're hearing maybe from your peers or professors about COVID or the restrictions?
Yeah, honestly, the vast majority of students are frustrated and very sick of these measures. Most of the people I've talked to, I mean, I've talked to a lot of people on campus about that through writing articles or just my general opposition to most of the new restrictions the university wants to impose. And the general sentiment is that we can really let a lot of this go. People might differ on, well, maybe we should still wear masks, maybe like DePaul should encourage vaccinations, but for the vast majority of these measures, people want to let them go. I feel like it's a very small portion of the student population that's loud about wanting to continue to impose their will on the rest of the student body. That's our student government and to an extent our faculty council continuing to push what they think is the right decision.
Great. Well, thanks again for joining me, and I hope you have a great semester and continue to report on this and what's going on other campuses for us.